should be. This is usually a little bit of a lull. It'll probably be a little bit of a quiet day today. I don't imagine we'll take the full hour. Again, that's what we sign up for, so we're happy to do so. So as always, keep the questions coming. Please put them in Q&A for those of you that are new to us, and there are a fair amount of you. Please put the questions that you have in Q&A as opposed to the chat. You're welcome to remain anonymous, but this way everybody benefits from them. You get the recording along with the questions and the answers. So please do that just from a housekeeping standpoint. Next week will be kind of it'll be I know it won't be our traditional office hours, but next Thursday at this noon time slot, we do a really comprehensive overview of all the, what we usually call I think it's the same name for next week, how the hell are we going to pay for this? So for the class 2021, that's kind of where we're at now. It's just about a month from now, most colleges on average will issue the bill for the fall semester, right? So usually around July 1st, you're going to say, okay, here's your bill that's due usually in and around August 1st for the fall semester. Now, just like everything in this process, for those of you that have been paying attention, every college is different, right? So there's, you have to figure out what are the what are the dates for whatever college your student's going to be attending. But on average, give or take 2 weeks, we get issued the fall bill around July 1st, due around August 1st. And it's right kind of in and around then that next year's rates, repayment terms, et cetera, get released. The feds just put out their rates a week or two ago, or they announced them. They don't officially change until July 1st. But they went up about a point across the board. We expect the state programs to follow suit. Not every state program has released their rates yet, and not every state has a borrowing program. So again, that's going to vary from one state to the next. But again, you'll get an invitation, and we encourage you to register for next week's tonight. I think the invitations for that presentation for next week is going out, and it's pretty comprehensive. I mean, what we're covering there is stuff like, okay, if we do have savings, when should we use what? 529 versus cash flow versus, we have grandparent or aunts that have 529s. How does that impact things? What about money in the student's name, right? So if we have resources, what do we do there first? And then if and when we have to borrow, how should we do that, right? And there's no, like most things in this process, there's no universal answer, black and white, here's what everybody should do. For some families, it makes sense to borrow through the student. Sometimes it's the parent, sometimes it's both. Sometimes we'll recommend the federal programs, state, private, et cetera, or home equity, some of these, what we call non-traditional type of options. But again, that's something that you'll want to tune into, and we'll go through that in pretty significant detail. You should walk out of there with your PhD in how to pay for this whole thing. So, so that's kind of the hot topics, I think. Right now, again, this week's a little bit of a lull, but certainly want to answer any questions that you have. So please pop them in there. And again, like I said at the top, if we don't have questions, we'll dismiss class early today. But we'll be patient until then. And maybe in the meantime, I'll just give you a sneak and pull up those state or the federal rates rather, but again, any questions, please fire away. Yep. So just quickly here. So the federal loan rates went up Give me just one sec. Okay, so the direct student loan, so what used to be referred to as the Stafford loans for undergraduates. So that's what everybody that completed the FAFSA can borrow up to $5,500 for freshman year. Those went up to 3.74 fixed. It was at 2.75 last year, so it was incredibly low last year. Still at a great rate, 3.7 and change. For graduate students, that went up to 5.2 from 4.3. And then the plus loans for parents went up to 6.284, so about 6.3, up from 5.3 last year. So it was the lowest in its history last year, the parent plus loans, up about a point to 6.3 for parents. And then for graduate plus loans, where did those go? Oh, the same. So the direct grad plus loans up to 6.3 from 5.3. So not the direction that we like to see, but in the world of this educational loan space, they're still pretty competitive. Yeah, so same deal, anybody that's the same rules will apply for the most part 1 year to the next. So in terms of how to keep the EFCs low, as little money as possible in the student's name. So if there are savings, investments, et cetera, in the student's name, generally speaking, and again, we'll go over this in detail next week, generally speaking, that's probably the first place we'll pull from, assuming that money is in fact earmarked for college. So, yep, that's the same concept still applies. Yeah, so in terms of test optional trends, obviously that was widespread this year. It's continuing in that direction. So now we've had a second state, Colorado. California was the first, as a matter of fact, that are now not just test optional, but test blind. They're not even taking test scores at California state schools. Colorado has followed suit. So that's a very interesting trend. I mean, that could completely change things. But I think the test optional trend, I don't envision it going away. And that seems to be the general feedback from colleges. So I think this is here to stay, at least for the next couple of years, where we're going to see the vast majority of colleges being test optional. So, how do the federal loans compare to private rates, and the repayment terms, et cetera? Generally speaking, the federal loan terms for the student loans, the direct loans, are 10 to 15 years, and they start you at 15 years, and they can be, there's no prepayment penalty, so you can pay them off as aggressive as you want. You can choose a 10-year repayment plan out of the gates. Parent loans can go up to 25 years if you so choose. It depends for the public as a whole. If we're just looking at percentages, for most families, the federal rates will be lower than the private rates. The private rates vary from about 4%, sometimes high threes if you have a perfect application, up to almost 15%. Right, depending on, it all hinges on the application of the cosigner. So in most cases, the parent's application, what's the credit score, number one driver, what's the net worth, what's the income, et cetera. And depending on that cosigner, that is the dictator in what you're going to get in terms of rates and repayment terms. And usually the feds will beat the private rate unless you have a very, very strong application. These are a little bit different loans in the sense that they're unsecured. There's no real collateral there. So it's not like a home equity loan where if you don't pay the loan back, the bank takes your house, right? Yeah, and exactly. Of course, College Board had some pretty massive layoffs already this year, largely driven by the SAT optional and the fact that so many less folks taking the SATs, part because of the fact that not everybody had to take them, and of course part due to COVID and the fact that we couldn't get people in the room to take them. So not good for business for College Board. They're a massive company, so I'm sure they will land on their feet and reinvent themselves. And but it's not good for business, no question. And we have, I forget, I'm trying to, the college is escaping me right now. But we saw one of the more aggressive kind of out of nowhere after the May 1st deadline, counteroffer, so to speak, just last week, a college, I'm forgetting it. It's a popular school up here in the Northeast, but they had this particular student had not put a deposit in that school. They were attending somewhere else, but they were accepted and got a package. And then that college just came back somewhat out of the blue and said, hey, we're offering you another $15,000 if you want to come here. So we're still seeing some offers trickle in from colleges that are obviously a little bit worried about full enrollment for next year. So those possibilities are still there. I think they're going to be few and far between at this point, but that's the latest I've ever seen one last week to my knowledge. So we'll plan to hang here, guys, for at least another 5 more minutes. If you have questions, otherwise we'll say we'll cut out early at 20 after, but any more questions, feel free to pop them in. Yeah, so next week you'll get an invitation tonight, but it's a walkthrough kind of end to end of how everyone should be actually paying these bills, right? So we start with, if we have resources, when should we use what? What about cash flow versus 529s versus savings versus potentially liquidating investments that are in the market? For those that need to borrow, should it be through the parents, through the students? Is it both? Regardless of the answer to that question, what's the best option? How do we know what that option is? Is it the federal? Is it the state? Is it the private? So it's really an extensive, overview. And the idea is that everybody leaves that, and we've been doing this for quite a few years and we refine it each year, that everybody can leave that presentation with a really good understanding of, okay, here's my best path forward based on my family situation. Here's how I get there, right? And it's very common that there's going to be follow-up questions. So we'll have the opportunity to do that, 2 weeks from today during these office hours where you should be a lot more knowledgeable and say, okay, I'm between, the federal and the state program, and here's, I understand these are the pros and cons of each of those programs. Can you help me nudge me in one direction or the other? Okay, everybody, we'll hang tight for another minute with any more questions, but like I anticipate a little bit of a lull this week. I think we'll have a lot more to talk about, certainly next week at this time, and then 2 weeks from today with any follow-ups. Yeah, so the question is how severe and how often you see colleges rescind offers based on second semester grades? I mean, scholarships, most merit-based scholarships come with a minimum GPA that students need to maintain. Most colleges are forgiving the certainly the first semester and oftentimes the first year, unless it's super egregious, where if you don't hit that minimum GPA, they do not take that scholarship away from you. It's very rare that they'll give you anything beyond the first 2 semesters. So if you don't get there sophomore year, you can expect that to go away. And again, I'm speaking in general terms here. So, we don't want to go into it expecting that if we don't hit the mark, it's going to remain there. But again, most colleges give us a little wiggle room, but that's it. Yeah, I mean, senior year in college, unless if you have a horrible senior slide in high school, it is incredibly rare that we'll see colleges rescind anything unless it's the Harvards of the world. Most of the Ivy League schools and those super elite schools will ask for second semester, fourth quarter grades. And if there's been a huge decline, we've seen those horror stories happen, but those are usually only those top institutions. Bill, you got anything to add? It looks like we expected, not much cooking today.
Yeah, no, I just letting you kind of drive the ship today. But yeah, little lull in the process. Just to echo Matt's words, we're gonna hit you over the head with quite a bit of information next week with regard to paying the bill strategy and all the rates and loans. So, I guess take this as a good thing in terms of acknowledging a little downtime, take advantage of it, and then we're going to be hitting you over the head next week and get you to the finish line officially with paying the bill.
Absolutely. All right, everybody, have a great week. We'll see you hopefully next Thursday, and then obviously 2 weeks from now for our standard time period there. See you guys.